Hey there, podcast listener. I just wanted to inform you, in case you didn't already know, that this is actually part 2 of an interview with Vernon Gordon, pastor of the Life Church in Richmond, Virginia. I would highly recommend you go back and listen to the first episode entitled Racial Tension. You can do whatever you want, but in my expert opinion, you might be a little lost if you don't start there first. Anywho, enjoy the interview.
If you think that a particular shooting was inappropriate, say that, right? Acknowledging an awareness doesn't mean you necessarily understand the Black experience. It's not saying I'm gonna vote differently. It's not saying it just says this shooting happened. I know it is sensitive to your community. Acknowledge an awareness.
Yeah.
Hey, there were some events that happened over the weekend. I saw this, and I don't think it was right.
Welcome to Reaching Out. I'm your host, Zack Carter. Please join me as I speak with a diverse group of people to find out their thoughts on religion, politics, and culture. Okay, so we see the problem. Okay, so there's an issue of racial tension in our society. Let's begin talking about how do we begin fixing? How do we begin fixing this issue? And there are going to be people listening to this that agree with some of the things you said. There are going to be people that disagree with things you said. I would love to find a common starting point to say, okay, where can we begin healing the divide in our country? Where can we begin coming together? So let's start with churches. So let's start a little bit micro, because you're a pastor. I'd love to start with churches first, and then we can look at society as a whole. Yeah. So how do you think we can go about beginning to bring white churches, Black churches, Hispanic churches, all of the above together? I know that they say Sunday's the most segregated day of the week. So what are some thoughts to helping bring together these churches? Have you seen any programs that have been successful at this?
Yeah, I mean, huge shout out to that point to East End Fellowship. I think they are one of the most concerted efforts at racial reconciliation through worship.
Can you talk about like how they started, what they're about?
Absolutely. They were a plant out of Third Presbyterian Church. I'm pretty sure I'm saying that kind of correctly. I know Third Presbyterian was kind of a sponsor and or a planter of East End Fellowship, and they started with 2 pastors, one Black, one white, sharing the pulpit equal amount of times. And I believe that was Corey Whitmer and Don Coleman, so 2 giants in our city ministry-wise, with equal spiritual maturity in their voices. So it wasn't like this person is here, this person is here, and a concerted effort at diversity on their worship teams and on their staff. And I think they have done a great job, and they planted in an inner city neighborhood, in Churchill. So, I think part of what they represent for us is if we're going to create this effort, right, in our churches of racial reconciliation, I think it starts with diversity of leadership. I think you have to, and here's the key there, you have to allow people to be authentic to who they are, bring their authenticity to leadership, right? So I have to be able to come to the table and represent my culture effectively in order for it to be an actual diverse leadership model. So, but diversity in leadership, people want to see leaders that look like them. That's why I think, what East End has done has been so phenomenal, because you see the leadership reflect the vision. That's easier said than done, right? Because we all come with preferences, and we all come with behaviors and habits based on experience and exposure. And so, and also network, right? Like, it's way harder for me. I think one of the questions I saw on the Facebook page, I don't know if I'm jumping the gun or not, but
you can go ahead. Yeah, go for it. What was the question?
It was along the lines, I'm not quoting it, but it was along the lines of, hey, how does Vernon, talking about myself in third person, how does, we do that on our team, like represent the diversity that we want to see? And it is difficult. It is extremely difficult, again, because of experience and exposure. If you are from a majority white church, you may come from a culture of staffing, where coming from a majority Black church, most Black churches come from a culture of volunteerism. So that budgeting is different, right? You have an expectation that you're about to do this full time. where I grew up in a culture where my mom volunteered to the end of her, right? You know what I'm saying? Like
they work themselves to death. Yeah.
So,
well, but what's interesting, just as a side comment, it's interesting though that like black churches tend to pay their musicians, whereas like a lot of the white churches, I've been to white churches that do pay their musicians, but usually those are the mega churches, whereas like just about every other white church that I've played drums at, it's like, you're showing up because you love Jesus. It has nothing to do with pay. Whereas like, but for
black people, music is like.
In the music, but it shows. I mean, honestly, the black churches I've been to, the musicians are just insane. But there are positives and negatives that come with both styles.
Well, and I think that's the complexity of it all, right? Like, if we're going to represent diversity and leadership again. I mean, I'll give you another one quick great example, and then I'll give you one more that I think is critical to us doing this thing as a church. But, even as I was talking to one pastor about, hey, Vernon, I'm struggling to retain my minority community, right? Like, I have black people coming in to my church. This white pastor was saying, the guy was saying, but he was like, but I can't seem to retain them, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things I was saying, what's your messaging? He was like, well, we just want to impact the city with the gospel. We just want the gospel. Is all that matters, right? You see my voice when I imitate white people. The gospel.
See, if I imitate black people, I'm in trouble right now.
I can do that. But he was just talking about that, and here's what I thought was crazy. I told him, I said, what minorities have been taught. If you look at the history of our churches in America, we were founded on this idea of social justice. The black church is not a black church just because black people are in it. You are literally the black church because you advocate for social justice and you are a refuge to community and you are a community center. If you read the book, Souls of Black Folk by W.E.B. Du Bois, you'll see that it talks about the uniqueness of the black church and what it represents to our community as a safe haven, as a refuge, but also as a community center, as an educational resource, everything, right? And so when you try to bring together diverse leadership, you have to bring all that understanding together because when you're communicating to that context, you might just say the gospel is important, but we'll say social justice is important, and that also affects our politics. That's how we vote a lot of times.
That's what I was going to start talking about.
So I think those are the type of the things you talk about when you talk about diversity and leadership and views. I think the other thing you have to do is you have to value experience if you want to really start having a conscious effort towards reconciliation in our churches, because we can't look at each other and say, that experience is unprofessional. Right? Particularly probably talking about white America to black America, right? Like that looks unprofessional. Where, like we have planning center now, and like I go to black conferences all the time, and every time I mention planning center, like what? Like what is that, right? And it's like a system, if you've never heard of it, that structures your worship service. Well, black people are like, why would I do that, right? It's experiential, it's emotional, it's flexible. So I recognize that yes, there has to be a conscious effort towards professionalism, but what made and one of the ways you see this evident, right? Just for a practical lens, and then I'll be done. I'm sorry, I ramble.
No, you're not rambling. Go for it.
A great practical example is in our music, right? So if you listen to songs, right, in majority white America, like let's say Hillsong, Elevation, right? You guys have the most lyrics ever. Like it's like, in the splendor of our King, rest in majesty. Like, man, and most black people, what we do is we take those songs and we cut all of that stuff out and just get to the main thing. Like, let's get to the chorus. How great is our God? And we'll sing How Great Is Our God for an
20,000 times.
Yeah. We'll do that.
Oh, I noticed. The first time I showed up, I was like, wow, they've sang this line a lot.
Now, if you don't understand the foundation of our experience, that's weird, right?
Yeah.
But why do we do refrains a lot? Well, I took a class in seminary on the history of African American music. And one of the things you'll find is we kind of have always kind of done this call and response / repetition thing from slavery. It was the way we walked through, it was the way that we escaped slavery sometimes. Like people would sing a phrase and they would sing a phrase, and it was the way we followed each other through the dark. It's
like the military does?
Yeah, similar to a military concept, right? Yeah. But it was the way that we would escape slavery. It was, follow the voice, follow the sound, and so we'll keep singing this refrain. It was the way that we encouraged each other when, through difficult times. We had to sometimes, sing these refrains, but they're also a way of communicating. So the message had to be consistent. Yeah. So we have these embedded, theological elements that now have created the experience we still have in 2017, but they resonate with us.
Yeah.
And us singing, so I have friends who sing on staff or sing or worship or be on staff at a majority white church and say, I love the experience. I love the professionalism. I definitely love the budget. Right? I love all of it. But I do feel like the music doesn't hit me because it's kind of like, I want to feel like it's something that I can sit with sometimes because of our experience, and vice versa. If I want to bring somebody on my worship team and staff who's from white America, I would have to be conscious of the depth, that they would like to go to, and the professionalism that they've been exposed to, that can also create an uncomfortable experience when every Sunday is unpredictable. So I think if we want to create great reconciliation efforts in our churches, I think again those two things are important. I think to share value for each other's experience, and then equally as important is to have diversity in leadership.
Yeah, and I know I was talking to a pastor friend of mine who is a worship leader, and he's had members of his church that are black come up to him and say, hey, we'd love to hear some gospel. We'd love to have some gospel tunes in here. And he was like, that'd be great, but the caliber of our musicians can't handle it. Right. Like whereas, so this is one of the downsides to not paying you musicians is that the caliber goes down a bit. And so, because I know white churches would want to do it. Do you have any solutions for that as far as like, hey, here's some gospel music that you can do. That's maybe the drummer's not as insane as.
Well, if you would like to call me and contract me to come in, and show your band,
there it is.
Promo moment, you can email me.
Do you think that churches need to maybe partner with each other and say, hey, you know what? Okay, so
absolutely.
You go.
Partnership. No,
you
hit it on the head. Again, when I think value and experience, I think to take that a step further, you lean into experience. You say, hey, let me bring you in, and I want to, learn and expose. I don't think black musicians, I know for a fact if a white worship pastor was to reach out to black musicians and say, hey, can you guys come into one of our, and just show us how you do what you do. I've actually done this with a church before, and it said, it might be overthought. Like, no, it's just about staying there a little longer, or it's just about this turnover or turnaround on the keyboard, and that creates a gospel feel. It's just about this approach to the drums versus this approach to the drums. And I think those things are able when we share with each other. And I think that's where you talk about valuing each other's experience. When you invite somebody else's group in and say, show us how to do what y'all do. Right? Equally as exciting is when black people get to go into white experiences and say, oh my God, you have a system that does this? Right? Like, we enjoy the exposure.
What is that?
What is that? What is that? Like, you paid for that? Like, we can get that? So there's an equal sharing and excitement about those sharing. I'll never forget, we went to this church, and I'm sure I can say the name of the church. We went to Clover Hill Assembly of God for a worship night. It wasn't hosted by Clover Hill Assembly of God, but it was there, it was on site there. And it was 5 different worship bands from all over the city. So Destination Worship, Clover Hill Worship, the Life Church, Mount Gilead. Matter of fact, that night it was just 4. Amazing, because I'll never forget, like, our musicians showed up and they were like, you guys don't have in-ears? It was like, and our
Clover Hill was like,
y'all don't have in-ears? They're like, what? Like, black people don't, we just walk around with in-ears all the time. And our musicians definitely made in-ears, but definitely our singers weren't. So we were like, why would we have that? And it's like, it's kind of a standard thing now. Like,
it's kind of standard.
Where? Like,
you guys are in the dark ages.
Where is that in the budget? Dark ages, really, Zach? Talking about black people? I'm just joking.
This is where the listener says click. He made a racial joke.
But don't edit that part out, Zach. No, but so you had that, right? But then vice versa, I'll never forget, after the sound check, the guy comes up to us and says, how did you guys do that without a click track? Like, you guys were just doing this and you were giving each other signals. It's like, this is how we just grew up. Like, it's not a big deal for us. It was our church experience. So I think the more we can start to learn to appreciate each other's experiences, I think the better off we'll be.
That's great. So, you talked about white churches needing to incorporate social justice into their program as a way to draw black people in. The issue I see with that, just knowing, white churches tend to vote conservative, black churches tend to vote liberal. I was going to try to dive into this, but I think this is too big of a conversation to have. So, more so, what I'd like to tackle is if they say, hey, we see some problems with the social justice movement. Are there other ways they can begin drawing black? Because I've you mentioned Clover Hill. That's the church I came from, predominantly white, but they have begun becoming multicultural. Mm-hmm. Are there ways to attract black people that may not involve that? So if that's not on the forefront, because they say we see some issues with this, are there ways to draw and keep black people? Is it music alone, do you think, or as a secondary thing, or because I know the preaching style is different as well.
Yeah. Well, I
or
think,
is it making people feel comfortable? Like, is there a way to help black people feel more comfortable?
Yeah, I think comfort is a big thing. Now let's keep all be honest here. I mean, because we've had a lot of white people come through our church. That I've had people who are members of our church who are white have conversations with me and said, I don't know why my friends won't stay. Right?
Yeah, well, I think part of it's the political. You don't talk politics all the time, but you will talk it sometimes. Yeah. I would say like maybe once a quarter or something.
Yeah.
And I know that there are, white evangelicals that are conservative that they've done their own research, they have their own beliefs, and so that's a turnoff.
Yeah.
And so. That has been something I've seen that I've said this is probably going to be an issue to bring in more white evangelicals.
Yep.
So it's the same problem because I know you're trying to make Life Church multicultural. So it's the same problem. It's like, okay, so you feel passionate about teaching these things, but in doing so, it's going to be harder to bring in more people of different cultures unless they agree with you politically.
Absolutely. I mean, so I know you don't want to dive deep down this rabbit hole, but I'll say briefly, I think it's important to note that historically, minorities were Republican.
Yeah.
Right? Like historically, particularly black people, we were Republican.
Yeah.
What I think you have seen transpire over, I don't want to put a year limit on it, but over recent years, is this idea of social justice and systematic, change and transformation has been a big ticket item for Democrats.
Yeah.
And what it has done is created, because I can tell you right now, my grandmother, all her friends, all my, and many of the black Christian leaders I know err on this, they're theological and moral values, their morality would vote Republican. But their experience prompts them to vote Democrat.
And that was one of the questions I was going to ask.
Yeah.
Because I was like, if you remove the social justice element, suddenly would they stop voting Democrat?
I think that would be a tough question since I'm representing all black people.
And that's why I wasn't initially, and that's initially why I wasn't going to ask it, but you kind of touched on it.
But it is. I mean, it is quite the possibility that morality would become a much more of an issue for particularly Christian of black descent, because let's keep it 100. Like I think we all are seeing that politics.
Wait, for my white listeners, what does it mean to keep it 100?
Oh, let's keep it 100. Like let's be real. Let's be authentic.
Yeah.
Let's cut through the whatever.
Stop using
right.
your lingo.
Yeah, I think
you're supposed to code switch for this interview.
Code switch, you got not at all. Not at all. No, I mean you really have to look at it and say, man, there would be a different paradigm, honestly, if again, I can't say that all black people would still vote Republican, because I do believe that the sentiment or the impression is, here's the sentiment of probably most of black America: Republicans are racist, right? But why is that? It is not because of where they stand on morality, all right? And so then when I talk to like white pastors and evangelicals and different people, they're like, well, I can't believe, did you see what Obama was going to do to abortion, and you see what he's going to do to this? I get all of that, but that doesn't change what my cousins are experiencing in their neighborhood, right? Yeah. That doesn't change the incarceration epidemic that grossly impacts minorities more than it does white America. That doesn't change those realities. So that matters to me too. Yeah. And essentially what you've seen is people say that matters to me more. Yeah. Right. And so I think it's, to your point, I think that's where you start to see these conversations kind of switch hands when it comes to Republican versus Democrat. And I think we all can acknowledge, when I was saying keep it 100, the statement I was about to make is, I think we all can acknowledge that politics as a whole, it just really isn't working right now. Like for for most of us, right? Like, I think white, black, or indifferent, you know, we are so divided that, you know, I talked to a Republican congressman one time. He invited 6 young minorities into the room to talk. He was a white Republican congressman. And again, I won't say his name because I wasn't approved to do so. But he said, hey, I want to just sit and talk to you guys about where we're at as a country and what I should be saying and what I should do. And so we represented various fields. I was the only minister there, but he had people who represented business, private sector, had people who represented politics, et cetera. And he asked, you know, he began to talk, and he said, I remember the night, he said, and he's a Republican congressman. He said, I remember the night Obama got elected at first. They called a private meeting, and they said, like in the meeting, he said, I was there. He's a Christian. He said, I was so heartbroken, I went home, I didn't know how to feel. He said, because the meeting said, we said, we're gonna do whatever we can to make sure that he gets nothing done for 4 years. Now, this is not black opinion, right? Because I know black America or white America, we all sit at our own tables.
Yeah, but do you think that was because he was black, or do you think it's because he was a Democrat? Because like,
but that's the question. That's the question.
Well, because like they said the same thing about Trump right now. It's like Democrats, you know, they're behind the scenes. They're like, oh.
Well, the statement I was making wasn't about black or white.
Oh, okay.
The statement I was making, we were talking about politics, and that's why I was saying we're in a place where politicians aren't even trying to work together.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, sure,
nobody,
Okay.
Nobody. So that wasn't even black white thing. This is just like we're not even trying to be across, you know, we say things like we're trying to work across party lines. No, we're not. Yeah. You know, we're just being divisive, and we're saying if I can't have my way, I'll steal the government. If I can, so I think across the board we have a political system right now that is so divisive, and that the reality of us getting anything done that represents the whole is slim to none.
Sure.
So again, but to your point about how that affects our churches, I think what we need to start thinking about is, I don't think music is the sole reality. I think when you start talking about comfort for people, you start talking about, again, what kind of community can you create? When I talk about social justice in white churches, and I think you mentioned it specifically, what should they be doing? I don't think churches should feel obligated to say things that they don't mean.
Yeah.
I think 2 things have to happen. One, I would recommend that if you're a white Christian right now and you're listening and you're saying, well, I don't know if I agree with all that Black America stands for in social justice. I will also challenge you, what have you done? Both ways, right? Like, I've had to do this as a Black American.
Yeah.
What have you done to lean into the experience of a Black American? Because it's one thing to watch Fox, right, and develop an opinion. It's one thing to watch CNN and develop an opinion. It's one thing to listen to, it's one thing to sit around a table with mostly white people, right, or mostly black people, and develop an opinion about another race. It's another thing to lean into their experience and say, for the next few months, for the next 6 months, for the next year, I'm going to not talk as much and listen. I'm going to invest time into walking into your experience. I'm going to sit in your schools. I always ask people this when they specifically ask me, well, why should I'm investing into my own PTA or blah, blah, blah. I always ask them, if your kid in Chesterfield and if your kid in Richmond are taking SOL on the same day, and this kid doesn't have AC in his building, and your kid does, would you send your kid to that school to take the SOL? Would you consider those conditions equitable for them to do the best they could possibly do? And if your answer is no, then you need to lean into that experience a little more. Like, what is happening over here? Does that mean that you're going to necessarily be the one who fixes it? No, but at least if you can expand the mentality and the perception, I think it creates more of an understanding of what we're advocating for. Even in Black America, I don't think there are friends of mine who every social justice issue we don't agree on. So I don't think the idea is do that. But I think it's about just leaning into the experience and saying, hey, we help a lot of stuff out here. For the next XYZ, we're going to be intentional about inviting in or leaning into experience. The second thing, really quickly, is just, and again, this same congressman called me at a later date and asked me a question. There was a shooting that happened, and he said, Vernon, I just want to know, what should I say and what should I not say for Black America? And here was the answer I gave him.
And right before you do that, can I just, so you had said a statement like, way back, I was going to comment on it, and then we went on a tangent. So before, so it's interesting that you said most people's perspectives are that Republicans are racist, and then you said, hey, here's a Republican that's been meeting with me. Do you believe most Republicans are racist?
No, and again, I think that goes back to my earlier statement.
Okay, I wanted to clarify that because some people may have heard that and said, okay, so he's calling Republicans racist.
No, I'm not. I am not calling.
I wanted to clarify that for your.
I'm not. Like, Republicans are racist. And again, and I know, and here's the thing. I know when I make that statement, I'm saying something that will be extremely sensitive to a lot of African Americans. I know there are African Americans who are going to feel like, well, Vernon, so let me explain this. They're going to be like, Vernon, well, how could you have said that, right?
That they're not racist?
Yeah, how could you have not said they're not racist? Because here's what we articulate, here's what we develop our impression off of. Well, they voted for this, or how could they, here's the real big one right for now, right? Let's call it low-lying fruit out. How could they vote for Trump and not be racist? That's the impression.
There's a lot of reasons.
But that's the point I'm making, right? The impression is the statements that he's made about culture, the bigotry, the racial commentary, the way he's emboldened what we feel, many systematic racial issues.
Sure.
How can, even his recent statements about the players in the NFL, calling them SOBs, right? We know who majority of the NFL is. Outside of quarterbacks, it's a whole bunch of black people running around, right? You know, it's Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, and black people. Yeah. That's what the NFL is. That's what the NBA is. That's what it is. So, you know, like, and you start to think about these things, and you say, this dude makes a lot of comments that we would consider racist. How could you vote for that? But the truth of the matter is, I am willing to say, I've also talked to black people who've done well in life, who say, hey, yeah, taxes is an issue for me as a black American, right? Like, you know, because I do make a certain amount. Yeah. Like, this is an issue for me. So I recognize that Republican agenda items and Democrat agenda items outside of the hot topics. And I think part of what we make all of our decisions is, and feelings are about these hot topic issues, right? Like social justice and prison reform and women's rights and abortion. And these are really big ones, right? But then there are so many other issues that outline the agenda, right? That we never even get to, honestly, on our major news outlets, because we're so consumed with
the big ones,
with the big ones. Items. So I don't think that, again, and I've had some unique opportunities, and so I would even say to those who listen who are from Black America, right? Like, I've had some unique opportunities to sit with some white congressmen who are Republican. I've had some opportunities to you know, be exposed to some conversations with wealthy blacks and wealthy whites. I've had some opportunities to have some exposure, and what I will say is, I don't think everybody is sitting around the table in either party saying, I want to oppress, or, you know, we're trying to run white people, or we're trying to oppress black people. But what I do believe is happening is a consistency of division in politics. And so if you as a church want to lean into that, you know, you have to be willing to listen to the experience, right? And you can't make the idea that, well, I can't imagine voting, because here's what they'll say, right? I can't imagine voting for abortion law. But don't minimize or marginalize the black view. That I can't imagine voting for somebody who I don't feel like respects my race and the women that you know, of our country. And those are where we kind of, I think, divide. But I think the second point I was gonna make about, you know,
the congressman
is that he asked me, what should I say? And I think the second piece that you should do if you're a church and you're trying to figure out how do I create space that's comfortable, I think acknowledge awareness, even if you don't have understanding.
So, like, even if you may disagree, you say, like, hey, I understand there are people in our congregation that believe these things. Yeah. We love you, we're here for you, you know.
Well, or I would even say this, even beyond that, like, if you think that a particular shooting was inappropriate, not all of them, and I say this in fairness, right? Like, I'm not saying that maybe you say, hey, we don't have all the facts, because that's what we love to go to, right? We don't have all the facts. So maybe you say, hey, this shooting, I just don't know. But this shooting I saw on video. I don't feel like it was justified. Say that, right? Acknowledging an awareness doesn't mean you necessarily understand the black experience. It's not saying I'm gonna vote differently. It's not saying it just says, this shooting happened, I know it is sensitive to your community. When you walk on stage, acknowledge an awareness. Hey, there were some events that happened over the weekend. I saw this. And I don't think it was right. And I don't know how to feel about that. And I'm not saying that's an indictment on the entire police system. I'm not saying that's an indictment on the entire, I just want to make an acknowledgement that we all need to not only be prayerful, but practical about how do we avoid issues like this in our country. So I think acknowledging awareness is also an important piece of making people feel comfortable.
Yeah, so you've met with, as you built this church up, I know you've met with a lot of white pastors who have come alongside and partnered with this church. What has your experience been with them? Because a lot of these people probably vote differently than you.
Absolutely.
Have different opinions on society than you.
Yeah.
What has it been like working with them? Has it been mostly positive, mostly negative? Whatever you want to.
Yeah, I've definitely had negative experiences. I mean, let's call that for what it is. I mean, I have definitely had experiences where I felt like my presence wasn't valued, and or I felt like I was a charity case. That's another extreme, right? Like, oh, we got one black one in, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't want to feel like that. I want to feel like a human being.
Yeah.
I don't want to feel like affirmative action. I want to feel like I matter at the table and I belong at the table. So those experiences have happened, but I will definitely say the vast majority of my experiences have been positive. The vast majority of my experiences have been helpful.
Yeah.
And I have found a heart for not just white community, but all community. What I have found is we gotta create more tables where we can share authentically and realize that most of us are divided about very few things, and we're connected on a lot of things. But we just never get to those topics.
Yeah.
And so if anybody's listening from any race, black or white alike, I would encourage us, be intentional about saying what do we connect on. Let's not only focus on divisive topics, but I think we'll find as we have conversation and build relationship with people that we're a lot more alike than we like to think. And again, in my experience is unique in this capacity. I grew up in a house with a white man. So growing up in a house with a white man, I could say to myself, hey, that's not that different. That's not that different. That's not that different. But it's a small group of areas that we do disagree that are hot button topics, but we can love beyond those. Yeah, so that's been my experience.
Well, and I agree totally. I was talking to I think this is something I could share. I don't think he would mind, but yeah, I was talking to Aaron Gary, the other white guy at TLC, and
there's two of y'all. They both got beards.
We both got beards.
Good hair, so you got to distinguish.
We got a few more.
The only way we distinguish y'all is the one with the tattoos or the one without them.
You can also say muscles and not muscles. That would also work. But yeah, I mean, I was talking to him, and we're both passionate about racial reconciliation and bringing people together, and. I just, when we were having this conversation recently, I just got to the place where I was like, I think when it comes down to it, it's just breaking bread with people that don't look like you. Yeah. I mean, I think it's really as simple as that. I think a lot of the racial tension in America that has been building up could be solved as something as simple as that. Just like, you know what, I'm gonna have some black people over for dinner, and that I think, because even when you get to the place where you disagree on things, you empathize with the other culture, you empathize with the other group, and so that's been something that, for me, like, as practical as it can get, man. You just go and have dinner with somebody that doesn't look like you.
Absolutely, and that's again another example of just leaning into the experience.
Yeah.
And the conversation doesn't have to be about politics.
And it doesn't.
Right,
you can just talk about whatever. Yeah.
Because I think it's so refreshing to leave a space and realize we're more the same than we thought.
Yeah, and my closest friend right now, he's black, and he we first started hanging out. It had nothing to do with like, oh, he's a black guy, I'm gonna go be his friend. It was just like, oh, he's some dude. And then like we got talking about music. We had similar music tastes.
Yep.
And for the first like year and a half of our relationship, we didn't talk about politics. We talked about Jesus, and we talked about food and music, pretty much, and movies.
Who were those music tastes, Zack? I'm interested.
The music tastes. I mean, we're talking. We both like Andy Mineo.
Yeah.
We like John Bellion. As a Christian, I don't know about promoting John Bellion because his stuff's a little racy. But yeah, I mean, we have people that we were just like, yeah, man, we just love this music, and so we connected, and so yeah, cool. Well, I think this has been a great conversation. I say we do the go ahead and transition to the bonus interview section. Have a little fun.
Yeah,
the hard part's over. So how do you feel?
Feel great.
Yeah, I feel it's a good conversation. I feel like it's a good conversation. So we're gonna do some fun stuff. How are you on time?
I'm good.
You good? Okay, cool. So let's do this. Let me log into my iPod where all my questions are. Let's see here. Do you want to give a shout out to anybody?
Man, shout out to, I don't know who I'm supposed to shout out, but I'm just
you
going
have to shout out. I was just trying to fill the time. I have the questions now, unless you actually want to do a shout out.
I'm just going to throw out some shout outs. I want to shout out, first of all, my wife.
There you go.
Who I love dearly.
You're a smart man.
I love her so much, and my two beautiful children. I definitely want to shout out to be on a serious note, like my grandfathers, both. You know, I've mentioned both of them through this podcast. One of which who, again, was a black man who was the first African-American everything in our City of Chesapeake Police Department. So he told me stories of being spit on and abused and threatened, and he kind of stayed the course. And then the opposite extreme of that, which is my white grandfather, who, you know, for all intents and purposes, did something that was just so radical for his time.
And he had like similar experiences being
absolutely like they told me a story of like him being spit on, like somebody like attacked him at their house, and he had to go into the front lawn and like fight. Like it was just
because he was married to a black
because he was married to a black woman with 3 black kids and fathered them well, and was a grandfather to me, and scared my wife half to death when she was my girlfriend at 16 years old. So I thank God for both of their examples.
Yeah.
And even my mom's real father, who she connected with later in life, who was a Vietnam vet. All of those various experiences of grandfathers just really have impacted my psyche and my perspective. And I just think so much of this conversation has been influenced by their, influenced by their example and exposure. So, and then lastly, man, just thank God for all the leaders. I mean, you already highlighted it, but honestly, and recently, just to be able to have authentic conversations with Pastor Brian Briggs, Pastor Stan Grant, Pastor, my boy Adam Martino, Pastor Stephen Poore, like guys in this area. I've just been able to connect with David Bailey, who's one of the leading thought leaders on racial reconciliation in our city. If you don't know anything about Arabon, just find out about it. He is really leading a charge for racial reconciliation. I'm just excited, man. God has blessed me to be around some great people and to learn a lot. I'm just super excited about it.
Cool. Perfect. Well, this is the first ever shout out section that we've done in the podcast.
So you waited till the black guy came to do a shout out section?
That's it had everything to do with race.
Because we make everything about race, don't we?
Obviously.
Just joking. Go ahead.
All right, so bonus interview section. Imagine a product in your brain. So picture something in your brain. Pick a product. Tell me when you got it.
A product?
Yeah, product. Any product. Anything. Imagine in your brain.
Got it.
Okay, you got it? All right. Now, what would be the worst brand name for one of those products?
Oh my God. Do I have to tell you the product?
Well, tell me the name first.
Oh.
Tell me the name first.
Okay. So the worst name ever would be, okay. The worst name ever probably would be, I don't know, that was a good question. Smell Away. I don't know.
Smell Away?
Smell Away.
Is it for deodorant?
Body wash.
Body wash. Okay,
Yeah.
Smell Away.
Smell Away.
I had, for mine, was blood catchers.
What is it?
For Band-Aids.
Oh, man. Yeah, that's horrible. Yeah.
Anyways.
Both of those would be horrible branding concepts.
You don't think blood catchers would be good?
No, blood catchers would be dangerous. It would be scary.
For Band-Aids.
It would be like you would think it's like what are we doing?
All right, so what are some fun and interesting alternatives to war that countries could settle their differences with?
Say it one more time.
What are some fun and interesting alternatives to war that countries could settle their differences with?
Oh, dodgeball competition all day.
Dodgeball competition.
Yeah, just dodgeball. Like, look, dodgeball is the most aggressive, / like everybody will still be alive at the end.
But you get to like get out your rage.
Oh my God, yeah. Like, have you ever played dodgeball? Like, I used to host when I was a youth pastor a parent versus kids dodgeball game. I thought it was for the kids. These parents, this was the most legal abuse you've ever seen in your life.
Legal abuse.
Only headshots. Like, I think if countries just said, oh, really? Like, I think right now, if we were to look at North Korea and Russia and we all came together for a big dodgeball tournament.
Bro, let's dodgeball it up.
Yeah, like all of us just, let's just get together and let's settle this on the real court. Yeah, I think we would be much
That's hilarious.
Wonderful countries.
Which body part do you wish you could detach and why?
Detach. Well, I don't want to let go of any of them, but.
Well, you can unscrew your arm and do something with it and then screw it back on. Yeah.
My ears.
Your ears.
Let me tell you why.
Okay.
I have 2 small children. One is 3, one is 1.5.
Oh no.
I have a wonderful wife. I've already acknowledged her presence. But when you have a wife and 2 small children, there's no such thing as silence. There's no such thing as not a to-do list. There's no such thing as not daddy. That doesn't exist. So if I could just unscrew my ears sometimes, it really
put them
help
in
me
a drawer.
Focus. Yeah. I'll be available later.
That's amazing. Yeah. Honey, leave daddy alone. He doesn't have his ears on today.
Yeah. Unscrewing my ears.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
What 2 totally normal things become really weird if you do them back to back?
2 totally normal things. Let me see here. If you do them back to back.
I can also give you mine while you're.
Give me yours.
Yeah. So if you under someone on the shoulder or something, and then you lick your fingers.
Oh, that's
yeah.
That's weird.
I'm like. Under the rules of it being normal, I'm like, okay, when you're eating your food, I don't look down on people if they're licking their fingers. I'll lick my fingers or whatever. So it's normal in the context of eating to lick your fingers. It's normal put your hand on somebody's shoulder, but the moment you're like, hey buddy, and then you lick on your hand, it's gross. Yeah,
that's weird. So I think a normal thing would be to, put your. I think it's weird when people take a shower.
Okay.
And then do something that's going to make them dirty, cut the grass. Those things are both normal, but why would you?
I thought you meant go to the bathroom. If you do it in reverse, if you do it the first way, if you go to the bathroom and then
take a shower. But a lot of people do that though.
Do it in reverse?
Yeah, which is weird to me. I don't understand that. That is a good point.
Wait, how would you know that a lot of people do that? That's a strange thing to know about people.
I don't. Maybe I wouldn't know a lot of people do that. But I do know people who can. Let's not talk about it.
We're moving on.
That's just
Okay, we'll move on. What would be the creepiest thing you could say while passing a stranger on the street?
Hey, they're good looking.
Hey, they're good looking?
No, that's not too weird.
It's not too weird. I guess it would depend on the person.
I guess it would, yeah.
Some people would probably be like, I was having a bad day, thank you.
Or if it was a man, that might also be awkward for me. Or I think it would be awkward just to be hey, you can't do that.
That would be hilarious.
I want to do that now. I want to watch that.
Thanks for listening to this 2-part episode with Pastor Vernon Gordon. I enjoyed the conversation immensely. I hope you did as well. I just wanted to take a second to let y'all know that here at Reaching Out, our fan base is growing, but we could use some of your help. That's right, you, the one I'm pointing to right this moment. If you haven't already, please like us on Facebook. We're at a little over 90 likes, and we're aiming to get 150 by Thanksgiving, so you could be a part of the movement known as Reaching Out with Zack Carter. So, if you haven't already, please give us a like at Reaching Out with Zack Carter on Facebook, and also subscribe and leave a review on iTunes. Lastly, if you could post your favorite Reaching Out episode on social media, whatever platform you prefer, it would help us to know what topics you guys have enjoyed, and it would also show your friends how awesome we are. Well, I hope you have a good rest of your morning, afternoon, evening, whatever time you're listening to this at the moment, and we will see you again next time at Reaching Out with Zack Carter.